I don't know if he's listening, but Todd Dunnigan, welcome to Sick'em 365 Sports. Bumped into him earlier today. He said, hey, where you guys been? And, of course, we're now part of 365 Sports on YouTube and have been since April of 2020. Todd said he was going to download the app and start listening to the show. Todd, thank you for being a part of the show. We're now joined by Drew Davison. Fort Worth Star-Telegram covers TCU and many things as well, college football and others. And this seems to be kind of a little bit of a cat fight. Am I getting that right, Drew? These two teams don't like each other.
Yeah, no, they definitely don't, Smokey. And you know, it's kind of like the TCU Baylor rivalry. There's really no love lost between these schools, and we can thank a kid named Rasheed Rice, who actually played in the Fort Worth area at Richland High School, kind of added the latest fuel to the fire. With some comments today just saying, you know, when people come to Texas, they come for Dallas, not Fort Worth, and things like that. So I'm sure that'll be talked about in the TCU locker room.
Oh, they clearly haven't been to Sundance Square, Drew, if they say that. But this SMU team has been built now over the last few years. They're not an easy out. They're a tough team. Is this maybe the most evenly matched we've seen this matchup in quite a while?
Yeah, I think so, Paul, and I do think, you know, Sonny Dykes has done a nice job of, you know, really working the transfer portal, so to speak, and getting some talent that way. And obviously, you know, 2 years ago, his scheme was pretty dang good against TCU. And, you know, he spent a year, maybe 2 years on Gary Patterson's staff, kind of between his Cal head coaching job and taking over SMU. So, he does have some familiarity with TCU. So I do feel like, you know, it's a fairly evenly matched, just in terms of talent. I do think TCU obviously probably is a little deeper, has more depth, but Sonny Dykes has certainly done a nice job, especially when you look at the receivers and some of their position guys.
Over on the Frogs offensive side of things, obviously a lot returning. Max Duggan, Quintin Johnson, who we saw play in high school a few different times against Midway, and also Zach Evans, who no matter what Gary Patterson says, Drew, everybody knows who Zach Evans is. We all remember his recruitment, but what kind of a revelation has he been for the TCU offense?
I mean, he's been huge, and yeah, I think Gary's beef has more to do with you know, I like a Dave Campbell's magazine, not including Zach on the all Texas preseason college, but clearly they had there's pretty good running backs throughout the state, but yeah, I mean, there's no question Zach Evans is a difference maker with the ball in his hand. You know, he's a guy, you know, I know Gary said ideally 10 to 12 carries, you know, to kind of keep him fresh, keep the committee happy, so to speak, but you know, if he's running hot, TCU's going to ride him, and he certainly was against Cal.
Yeah, he's special. There's no question. And Max Duggan, I like this guy. I do. I know he's got to get a little bit better. And you see the quarterback play right now around the conference, even some of the guys that are supposed to be pretty good. Where is he as his progression as far as maturity and growing up? Because at times I don't think Patterson trusted him. I know he had to deal with a couple of bumps and bruises, but I kind of like the way he plays the game.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And you know, the biggest issue kind of for Max Duggan and TCU, and it's kind of been a trend throughout, you know, since he's been quarterback, is TCU tends to get off to slower starts. I think last year there's only one game they scored a touchdown on the opening offensive drive, and you saw them get off to a slow start again against Cal a couple weeks ago. So they just have to figure out how, you know, to start faster. And then on top of that, he has to get better with the vertical routes and the deep ball and connecting on those, because that's been, again, kind of an issue. You know, hey, when do you hit driver? When do you know, hit wedge, so to speak? Get some air under the ball, let receivers go make plays. So that's been a work in progress. But, you know, as far as the grit, the toughness, the mindset, all of that, Max passes with flying colors. It's just, you know, if you're going to nitpick, there are a couple areas where he needs to get better, and he'd be the first to admit it.
What have you seen from Quintin Johnson this season? Is he taking a step forward in your estimation?
Oh, for sure. And Quintin Johnson's a kid, who had a pretty, decent freshman season. Flashed at times, but he also, I think, had 8 or 9 drops. And, just talking to coach his teammates, I mean, his work ethic and mentality, is kind of rubbing off on the team. He's one of the first guys there, last to leave. He's always on the jugs machine, kind of to combat that drop issue, so to speak. And he's also a guy, yards after catch, Pro Football Focus had him, I believe, 12th in the country last year in YAC yards. And this year, I think he's over 6-7 yards after catch. And he had a big play for a 45-yard touchdown against Cal, where I think he, took it 25, 30 yards after catch for the score. So that's really where he's dangerous. If he can get the ball in his hands in some open space, he can make things happen.
So, Drew, TCU is always going to be solid defensively. We know that, and they've got a couple of just banger-type players on the defensive line. They've, got Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, who we covered as well at Midway. They're in the secondary, roaming and making some plays. But there are some questions. I mean, if you do have some things you're looking for on the defensive side of the ball, what areas do they need to clean up, or maybe who needs to come back into the lineup, or what are you kind of seeing as far as the TCU defense goes?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's always going to be solid. It's just about, kind of being special. And I do think, when you look at their defensive ends, the pass rush, they've only had 1 sack through the first 2 games. Granted, it's a small sample size, so this is a unit they're really high on, and they feel like they should be able to get some pressure on the quarterback. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Some teams have been getting the ball out fast, quick passes, things like that. So they do need, to have time, I guess, so to speak, to get to the quarterback. But they feel like that's going to come around eventually in terms of getting more pressure on the quarterback. And then, from a secondary perspective, Trey's been playing well. He actually almost had an interception last week for back-to-back weeks, but, it was overturned upon review. But the other secondary is very young. I mean, the safeties, they lost 2 guys, Ardarius Washington and Trey Merrick, to the NFL. So they do have some, young, costly experience going on kind of during some of these games. But they do like the potential and, the ceiling of the unit overall.
Yeah, it seems to be the possibility with Zach Evans, even though there's youth in certain places like you mentioned, that this could be a team. This is obviously SMU's a non-conference game, but do you get the impression that Patterson likes this team? And that doesn't mean that most coaches aren't going to always say they do, but you can kind of tell sometimes. Does he feel like this one could be not special, but pretty good?
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. And you can tell he really likes Max Duggan as his quarterback, as the leader. Just kind of his mindset, his mentality. He likes the team chemistry. He kind of, in typical Gary Patterson, I mean, he likes that they're pretty much flying under the radar still. I mean, they're not ranked. They have, obviously, they're receiving votes. They're right on the cusp of the top 25, but they're not in it yet. So he kind of likes, kind of flying under the radar. And I really do feel like, he believes this team can get to the Big 12 championship and compete for a conference title. I mean, I think he feels they've got enough talent to get there and do that. Now, whether they do or not, we'll see. But he does, I feel, and I'd be, honest too, I feel like they've got that same type of potential when you look at a Zach Evans, when you look at a Max Duggan, what they have on defense. There's no reason they shouldn't contend for a Big 12 title.
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time. 4-Star Telegram. Drew Davison covers TCU with us as they play SMU this weekend. Yesterday, Billy Embody joined us, and then today we told you for the second time in 3 weeks, Tanner Mordecai wins the Campbell Award trophy for the best performance by a player who plays for a Texas college or university and or is from the state of Texas as well. Craig puts together those nominations every single week, and I thought this week, Craig, was probably the least explosive of the options. There's always like 3 or 4 you're like. In fact, Zach Evans a couple of weeks ago, the week that Tanner Mordecai, it could have been Evans. But it was probably the least amount of explosive nominations that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was just not as good of a list, yeah.
But that will change because there's amazing talent from the state and playing for the state's schools as well. When we come back, Barrett Salih, he covers college football for CBS Sports on the landscape of where we are after a few weeks. Is there an elite team? Is there an alpha dog? Is everybody